American schools are prisons, the students and teachers are trapped, and the outcome is a mass production of bored robots. Well, at least that's what teacher and author John Taylor Gatto states in his essay, Against School.
After 30 years of teaching in the worst and best schools in Manhattan, Gatto became somewhat of a self-proclaimed expert in how the students and teachers are negatively affected by the public education system. After analyzing his opinionated essay, I decided to take the time to find out for myself if other people in our schools agree or disagree with Gatto.
They all sat down with me to provide their intriguing insight about public education and how their view is related to John Taylor Gatto's.
Thank you for having me. Sure, I can easily see if the teacher is bored and uninspired, then the students become bored and uninspired. I mean, we see it happen elsewhere with parents and their children, pastors in their church, bosses and their employees, and even coaches and their players. So from that aspect, I do agree. And you know, I could agree too if the teachers are mandated to teach in a particular way, such as with Common Core or teaching to the test, as they say, as opposed to fulfilling the defined purposes of the educational units or the classes, then boredom can easily arise.
Well, Mr. Gatto's experience is different than my own, and I disagree with his opinion based on my own training and experience. We use techniques to engage students and to improve their learning environment.
Yeah, you know, this bothers me personally because I agree with C.S. Lewis that the task of the modern educator is not to cut jungles, but to irrigate deserts. So in other words, we are not to starve the students' sensibilities or their ability to appreciate and respond to values and emotions, or to be inspired and creative to engage and solve their problems.
We use techniques to engage students and improve their learning environment. As educators, we rely upon our professional skills to evaluate and adapt to meet the changing needs of our students. Teaching, I feel, has become more challenging due to the fact that we no longer just teach concepts, but also application of those concepts.
Yes, I would agree, as there are problems with everything. Nothing is perfect, and any system that understands that from the outset will likely fare better than those who assume systems or people are perfect and capable of being unscathed by their free will. Now, to the specificity of the problem portrayed by Gatto, of which perhaps did suffice for purposes in past years and settings, I can see that this is a problem against the purpose of education and what he envisions today.
No, I do not. It's too bad that Mr. Gatto had such a miserable career. He should have recognized earlier that he didn't enjoy teaching and was not a positive educator and left the career sooner. It seems though he had a fixed mindset, and a growth mindset is needed to keep up with the changing needs of the students. As an educator, we participate in training and learning programs on and off campus and interact with other teachers district-wide. This sharing of information is important to improve teaching throughout the district.
I guess I see an underlying cause-effect relationship where education is designed in a certain way, produces a certain set of results. So your question seems a bit loaded because I don't think that forced confinement and routine represent each side of a spectrum. Rather, we might place anarchy at the opposite end. Routine then becomes a more consistent, maybe reasonable way to structure the means to a particular end. Routine provides many well-documented benefits, both mentally and physically, as well as this routine aids in training in the sentiments and sensibilities that we talked about earlier.
In essence, our routine frequently incorporates changing and flexible experiences into our learning and working environment.
As a scientist, it's hard to determine if it's right or wrong until the options are tested against each other and then compared to the purpose they are designed to accomplish. I think looking at varied routines, number of classes, types of classes, teaching styles, days, months, and years of schooling are all testable questions.
Certain routine, time, and duration are necessary. Planning for and teaching concepts and materials and student application of principles requires time. We rotate teaching teams, and our students rotate to different teachers within their learning community, or LC. They also have fine art classes, as in band, art, music, orchestra, plus PE time built into each day.
Well, now you're putting me on the spot. In behavioral psychology, we do emphasize routines and maintaining them, but we also teach being open and accepting of deviations from that routine. We actually call it flexibility or cognitive flexibility. So I might focus on aspects of routine that do translate to key aspects of development, such as starting on time each day and maintaining a consistent, strict grading system to develop consistency, diligence, and responsibility. I think these are key important factors that students can learn in their educational experience. From there, we can provide flexibility of the administration and the teachers to maximize the means to the end, or the chosen purpose for that educational system.
Personally, I would prefer a year-round school program and do away with the long summer break. In my experience, it takes students and teachers too much time to effectively start the fall semester.
Given those choices, I would choose probably more effective than destructive, only because the data that we have supporting the positive relationship of educational attainment with other important factors such as quality of life and social, financial, and physical independence and health. So with that said, I would consider though that effective is a relative term, and there stands to be much improvement to the current system.
There's far too much proven success to agree the system is destructive.
Perhaps, but I am not being optimistic. Despite some benefits, the data I have seen on Common Core success have not been very positive. Perhaps I could be more convinced if educators and parents were a much bigger part of the development process. The emphasis on standardized tests were also utilized in combination with or as a component of other outcomes, so there's not so much of a focus there. If teaching style were a bit more malleable beyond the one-size-fits-all approach that the Common Core can induce, and if the government had less control over the public education.
Common Core is an important foundation element of the overall education program. It is not everything we do, and we do not teach only Common Core. We build upon a foundation and go from there with innovative, fun, and engaging teaching methods.
I lean toward negative. Now, it is positive in the sense that I'm very glad we have an emphasis on education in this country, with growing opportunities beyond public education, such as private education, voucher systems, and even non-traditional degrees of higher educations, like associate and technical program degrees. However, for public education, I prefer a constitutional approach which seeks to avoid and then decentralize the concentration of federal power over education to the state, local, and private endeavors. I am hopeful, though, that we can continue to improve and shift that curve.
positive. As in anything, there's always room to improve, and we want to, and we strive to improve year after year. It is expected of us, and we want to as professionals for our students and our community.
As a society, I'd like to say yes, but I see us getting further and further away from many of the foundational principles in this country, especially with education. Certain laws, though, such as the Every Student Succeeds Act, that allows more local and state control and less federal control of educational standards, could be helpful in getting us back to a commitment to the Constitution. And for that, I'm hopeful.
Schools and education are an important part of our overall society. I am confident we as educators are doing our part to push society in the right direction.
Interviewing two different types of educators in America's public school system unraveled the connections and disconnections between their personal experiences and John Taylor Gatto's. By continuing to search for answers on how to help our education system, maybe one day someone will finally figure out how to keep our educational learning on track.